Are you going to be sentenced to an eternal hell when you die? Or is there something else entirely going on?
You're listening to Inspire Me with Jay, where science meets spirit and stories of meditation and the near-death experience awaken what's possible within us all. I'm Jay, and this is your moment to be inspired.
Welcome to Inspire Me with Jay. I'm your host, author, and teacher, Jay Spillers. Please do like, subscribe, and share everywhere. I wanted to talk about something interesting today. When you die and you go to your final judgment, is this like a courtroom? Is this like where you're going before a judge who's going to be sentencing you? I'm going to sentence you to death for your sins, or I'm going to sentence you to life without parole in hell for all of eternity. What is really going on here? And I think when you understand the paradigm that you're coming from, that this explains a lot of things, because if you've ever watched anyone like Ray Comfort, Ray Comfort's this street evangelist, and he's very well known. And he'll go up to people and go through the Ten Commandments and say, "Well, have you ever told a lie? Have you ever stolen? Have you ever had a hateful thought about someone? Have you ever lusted after someone? Well, the Bible says you committed adultery in your heart." So, by your own admission, because they always say, "Well, yeah, I have done all these things." He says, by your own admission, you're a lying, cheating, uh, adulteress who's committed murder in their heart. And what do you think that judge is going to do to you? What do you think God's going to sentence you to? Do you think it's going to be heaven or hell? Because he's from New Zealand, and of course they say, "Well, I guess um, I'm going to go to hell." It's like, "Well, I don't want you to go there." And then of course, he goes in and explains about Jesus and everything. But you notice right there that there's a paradigm that's set up. He sets it up in a way to where when we die and we stand before God for the judgment, that it's like a judgment, like a courtroom. That we're basically going to be tried and sentenced for our crimes, for our sins, and we're going to be punished for them. And most people have accepted this sort of paradigm. It's very common in our culture to see cartoons like Tom and Jerry standing before the judge, and you know seeing the gavel go down, and he's being sent off to hell. And it's a very common theme in our culture, probably to a great extent based on what the church has taught for centuries and millennia, going down to popular culture. But what if that paradigm wasn't exactly correct? What if instead of going to a courtroom, we found ourselves more like in a classroom? And so there's a judgment here, but it's not a judgment in terms of a penal sentence that's going to be passed down from a judge, like an earthly judge. But it's more like a conference, a parent-teacher conference, if you will, where we're going to assess the life that you just lived, the mistakes you made, the good things you did, the things to learn from, the things to improve upon. It's more of a academic, in that sense, assessment. And this seems to be, when you start getting into the near-death experience literature, this seems to be more accurate. This life on earth is more like a school. And so when you reach the end of this school, there's going to be a conference, the life review. This is the judgment. And we're going to assess how you did. And, some of the things may not be very pleasant, because we may have to get real. Some things may require correction, just like, in school is not totally devoid of discipline correction, right? You might get sent to detention if you're in school. You might have to write sentences. You might even, like in the olden days, go down and get paddled. You might have to clean the erasers or whatever they do in school now. But the whole goal of school is not obviously discipline. That's just a secondary thing to help you in the ultimate goal of school, which is to learn, to grow. And that's what we're doing in this life. It's like school, and we're trying to experience life, and we're trying to learn to love more and to be more authentic and to come into this world totally ignorant, totally forgetting where we came from, and let's see what we can learn. Can we learn acts of forgiveness? Can we learn mercy? Can we learn cooperation or whatever, all within a larger context of love? And so now we're sitting in this classroom conference, and you notice, like a lot of times with the near-death experience, that God isn't really judging them, we're judging ourselves. So we're he's flashing the spotlight on us, but we're able to then assess, oh yeah, I didn't do too good here. Oh, I did pretty good there. I did this right. I did pretty good here, but I could have done a little bit better. So it's more of an assessment of how we did, where we go from here as a spiritual being. And so I think if you can move away from that courtroom paradigm of the final judgment to a classroom paradigm, we're going to assess how has your school been going, your school career on earth been going, on earth school, that it can make a profound difference in how you understand yourself, how you understand this life, and how you understand God ultimately. Because God, instead of being like a judge who's going to slam the gavel down and sentence you, to an eternity in hell, he's more like an educator who's helping to help you assess your life, and that any discipline there is just for your benefit.
You're listening to the Inspire Me with Jay podcast. Please do like and subscribe to the channel, bringing hope and inspiration to the world.
Not to be retributive, not for retribution, but for correction, but to move forward. And so, and that kind of puts everything in perspective too. Like, people quote Hebrews 9:27, it's appointed unto man once to die and then the judgment. Well, we die once from this life. There's going to be an assessment of it. But it doesn't mean just because you've died and you're sitting in the assessment that, okay, unless you said the right prayer at one point in your life, or you believed certain things, you're just, you're up a certain creek if you hadn't done that. Well, no, it's an academic exercise. It's more for our spiritual growth. It's definitely helpful if you've embraced the light, if you've, at this point on earth, you've got right with the light. It's definitely helpful, but it's not going to, you're not screwed for all of eternity because you haven't learned as much as you should. You haven't embraced the things that you should have embraced. You're not screwed for all of eternity. That's the whole point. So yeah, there's an assessment, but we're not just up a certain creek without a paddle. And it's just kind of an interesting paradigm to come to, and that I think it's especially hard for a lot of Christians to see that, but it makes complete sense. And obviously it has questions about what was the meaning of the cross, and there's different redemption theories about what it all means, and there could be a place for substitutionary atonement in the sense of, you need to be disciplined. You can learn from someone else taking your discipline and then move forward. So there still could be a place for that substitutionary factor, but it may be other factors as well. And so Earth is a school, it's not a sentence. And I think Earth is a classroom, not a courtroom that we're going to ultimately go to. And I think that is a profound thing to understand. And here's the thing about heaven and hell, too. We think of heaven as hell as like a sentence that's going to be pronounced on you. You're going to hell. But really, it has more to do with the health of our soul. If your soul is steeped in darkness, if you're not living authentically, if you're not walking in the light, your soul's going to be, in that sense, sick, deadened. And in that state, you're going to be downward. You're going to be in a darker spiritual mindset. You're going to be in a darker realm. And so if you die in that state, you might find yourself in a dark realm because your soul is not as healthy as it should be. It's sick. It's deadened. And see, that's where, Christ can come in like the great physician and help to elevate the vibration of our soul, bring us up to a spiritually healthier place, if you will, to fully restore us to who we were always meant to be, to align us with who we authentically always were and who we are, aligning ourselves with our authentic selves. Because I think when you talk about being born again, born of the Spirit, it's to be illuminated, to awakened, to, in that sense, have the physician give you the spiritual medication, or the spiritual whatever, to help you to awaken, to become restored to health, fully embracing the light. And so in that sense, you're aligned with your authentic self. And that's the essence of heaven and hell. It's where you vibrationally find yourself. We see it in this life, but then when all the blinders are off and we're just sort of living out of our soul, well, then it becomes, much more apparent as to where we are. It's the light, bright heaven, or it's a darkened state that we find ourselves in. But it has to do with the health of our soul, not really like a formal pronouncement of sentence from a judge. Again, going back to the classroom, where are you in your spiritual learning? Are you in a low vibration or a high vibration? So I want to thank you for joining me today, and remember to tune in next week. Earth is a school. Enjoy it while you can.